Parents missed my graduation, but remembered to bill me for my sister's Vegas Bachelorette weekend. $2,740, my share for flights plus the suite. I sent back $2.74 with one note. Didn't gamble, not paying. Then I froze the shared card, flagged every charge I hadn't made, and revoked every linked account. By morning, all guest access was removed. At 9:13 a.m., my brother Ryan texted, "The hotel won't let us in. What did you do?" That was the moment it stopped being about money. It became about how long my family had been comfortable treating me like an invisible bank account. I was the only graduate whose family didn't show up. Every name called across the stage came with cheers, flowers, someone holding up a shaky phone. Mine had one cold folding chair, with my last name taped to it, and nobody sitting there. My friends tried to make up for it. When my name was called, they screamed so loudly that people turned around. They waved their phones and shouted my name like I was a rock star. I smiled, held my diploma with both hands, and posed for every picture. Underneath it all, I still felt the empty chair. 3 days earlier, Mom had called and told me Emily's Bachelorette trip in Vegas was already booked. Non-refundable. Flights paid. Suite paid. "It's just a ceremony, Brianna," she said. "What matters is that we're proud of you." I didn't argue. That was always the pattern. Emily got the spotlight, Ryan got the sympathy, and I got silence until someone needed a favor, a login, a payment, or a signature. After the ceremony, my friends dragged me to a bar that gave free drinks to graduates. I sat there in my gown while they toasted me harder than my own family had. Later, waiting for my Uber, my phone buzzed. Venmo request. Dad, doze. Set since 40. The note read, "Vegas Bachelorette bash your share." I stared at it, then laughed. Back in college, Dad had convinced me to add him as a joint user on my first real credit card. "Emergency stuff only," he'd said. I never realized he had kept that access active, and I definitely didn't know they were using it for Vegas. I opened the account. $869 for a suite at the Venetian. $345 for bottle service. Flights, group dinner. Matching shirts that said Emily's Last Ride. Uber Lux rides. Even a strip club charge listed as entertainment. I didn't answer Dad's request. I sent $2.74 with a note. Didn't play. Didn't pay. Then I froze the card, reported every charge I hadn't made, and flagged the biggest ones first. Hotel, flights, club tabs, then the petty ones. Rooftop room service, a private Grand Canyon tour, and $42 Bride Squad sunglasses. I changed every password, removed linked payment methods, revoked guest access, and locked them out of the shared Apple ID. No more music, no more shared photos, no more family calendar reminders. They wanted to use me for a good time. They could have the hangover too. The next morning, the bank confirmed guest access had been blocked. At 9:13, Ryan texted, "The hotel won't let us in. What did you do?" I ignored him. Instead, I posted a graduation photo with the friends who had actually shown up. Caption, "Family isn't who shares your blood. It's who shows up." By noon, I had 6 missed calls and 3 voicemails from Mom. I already knew the script. Guilt, deflection, some speech about how family doesn't keep score, except mine did. They kept it in payment apps and invoices. The 4th voicemail was Dad. "You need to fix this, Brianna. You're acting like a child. Call me back now." I sat on my bed among moving boxes, my graduation cap hanging from the door handle, and realized the card wasn't the real wound. My graduation had been treated like an inconvenience in their party schedule. The fraud investigation moved quickly. The bank temporarily reversed several major charges. Then Emily texted, "The hotel froze the deposit. We had to move to a double room. It's humiliating. You couldn't wait one day?" I saved the screenshot. Ryan followed, "You're being petty. Everyone's miserable. We had to cancel dinner because they wanted a card on file. What is your problem?" I finally replied. Not mine. Then I blocked him. By evening, relatives I barely spoke to started reaching out. One aunt wrote, Brianna, honey, don't let this bachelorette nonsense come between you and your parents. They were only trying to include you. Include me. That was what they called charging my card for a trip I wasn't on while skipping the biggest day of my life. That night, I went through everything else they still had tied to me. I paid off the phone balance and moved my number to my own account. I changed every streaming password, left the shared cloud storage, and split my car insurance from the family policy. I also removed the old family cloud folders, years of photos, documents, and shared reminders that had quietly made me everyone's unpaid administrator. For a second, hovering over the confirmation button, I expected to feel guilty. Instead, I felt something closer to grief, followed almost immediately by relief. I wasn't erasing the past. I was removing their access to my future. Every password change felt small on its own, but together they formed a door locking one click at a time. By the next morning, I was untethered. Every cord they had kept wrapped around me under the word shared was gone. That was when the panic sharpened. Dad left another voicemail. This isn't a game, Brianna. You're jeopardizing your mother's credit. Fix it now. For the first time in years, I could hear fear in his voice. My cousin Josh texted at 10:04. They're losing it in the family chat. Ryan is calling this financial abuse against them. I laughed. I wasn't trying to destroy anyone. I was making one point. They had spent years teaching me I was optional until money was involved. Now they were going to find out what life felt like when I finally believed them. For the next 2 weeks, silence settled over everything. No more frantic calls from Dad. No new accusations from Ryan. Emily stopped sending angry messages about ruined reservations and embarrassing conversations with hotel staff. Even Mom went quiet. At first, I assumed they were regrouping, waiting for me to feel guilty enough to reach out. That was how things had always worked. They pushed until I snapped, then disappeared until I convinced myself I had gone too far. Except this time, the silence didn't hurt. It felt clean. I slept better. I packed the rest of my apartment without wondering whether somebody needed my Netflix password or whether Dad had put another temporary charge on my card. Then, exactly 2 weeks after graduation, a thick cream envelope appeared in my mailbox. Emily and Michael's wedding invitation. August, Lake Tahoe, black tie. Family-only rehearsal dinner. RSVP by July 1. Hotel information attached. Travel not included. For half a second, I almost admired the confidence. Then I noticed another envelope taped behind it. Inside was an invoice. An actual itemized invoice listing what they called my remaining contribution toward Emily's Vegas Bachelorette trip. The amount was $1,826 after the disputed transactions and reverse charges. At the bottom, in Dad's handwriting, were 5 words. Let's not make this weird. I stood in my kitchen holding that paper and actually checked the date, because part of me wondered if this was some elaborate joke. They had skipped my graduation, charged thousands to my account without permission, blamed me when the charges were challenged, and now they wanted me to attend Emily's wedding while carrying an outstanding balance like I was a delinquent customer. I didn't call. I didn't argue. I went to the wedding website, clicked RSVP, selected no, and submitted it. Then I opened another browser tab and booked myself a room at the exact same Lake Tahoe hotel for the same weekend. My own card, my own reservation, my own money. I didn't intend to attend the wedding. I just wanted to be close enough to make one thing unmistakably clear. They didn't get to decide when I existed anymore. The first thing I did was send an anonymous message to the wedding venue. Nothing dramatic, no threats, no accusations I couldn't document. Just a short note, suggesting they verify payment authorization carefully because the bride's family had recently been involved in disputed credit card charges. I sent something similar to the hotel. Then I checked Emily and Michael's wedding website. Their entire relationship had been packaged into pastel fonts and engagement photos beneath headings like Our Journey and Forever Starts Here. I spotted a typo on one page. and almost impulsively emailed the site administrator from a throwaway account, claiming I was a cousin helping Emily correct a few details. Somehow, they gave me temporary editing access without verifying anything. I could have destroyed the entire site. I didn't. I changed one sentence under their relationship story. Emily has always been surrounded by love, generosity, and at least one credit card she didn't own. It stayed up for maybe 3 hours, long enough. By that evening, screenshots had made their way through the family. Emily messaged me from a number I hadn't blocked yet. "You really think this is funny? Grow up." I read it and closed the conversation. No reply. Instead, I posted another graduation picture, me in my gown, with 3 friends hanging off my shoulders, all of us laughing because one of them had almost dropped a bottle of champagne outside the auditorium. Caption: "Best day of my life. Not one regret." Then I blocked Emily's new number. They still believed this was about revenge. Maybe part of it was. I wasn't pretending I had become some perfectly enlightened person overnight. I was angry. I wanted them uncomfortable. But underneath that anger was something more important. For once, I wanted my absence to cost them something. Not money necessarily. Certainty. Access. The assumption that Brianna would always absorb the inconvenience, so everyone else could keep smiling. The weekend of the wedding came faster than I expected. I drove into Tahoe alone and checked into the hotel 2 floors above the suite reserved for the rehearsal dinner. I didn't bring a dress. I didn't bring a gift. Just jeans, boots, a few shirts, and a duffel bag. The night before the ceremony, I walked through the lobby after dinner. Michael's mother was at the desk arguing politely about extra room keys. Bridesmaids were drifting through the bar in matching satin jackets. Flowers were being wheeled toward one of the ballrooms. Then the elevator doors opened, and Emily stepped out. She saw me immediately. Her smile vanished before she could stop it. We looked at each other for less than a second. I didn't nod, didn't wave, didn't glare. I walked past her, tapped my own room key against the elevator sensor, and kept moving like she was any other hotel guest. Somehow that felt better than screaming ever could have. That night, I went downstairs and left a sealed white envelope with the concierge. Michael's name was printed on the front. Inside was a short note. "You deserve to know that the Vegas Bachelorette trip everyone thanked the family for was partially funded through a credit card Emily did not own. The charges were disputed because I never authorized them. She missed her sister's graduation to go on that trip. Then her family billed that sister afterward. Ask her what happened before you decide whether this matters to you. Congratulations and good luck." No insults, no demands, no return address. Just facts. I knew Michael might throw it away. He might hate me. He might believe Emily. None of that mattered. I was finished protecting the version of the story that made everyone else comfortable. I left the hotel immediately afterward and drove across town to meet 2 friends who happened to be spending the weekend nearby. We drank beer, played pool, and talked about everything except my family. For a few hours, Tahoe felt like somewhere I had chosen, rather than somewhere I had followed them. When I got back at 1:30 inches the morning, there was a voicemail waiting. "Michael." His voice was tight. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, Brianna, but I'm not letting you ruin this weekend for us." Then he hung up. I listened once and deleted it. His reaction told me one useful thing. He had read the note. By morning, something had shifted. The hotel had quietly placed a notice near the front desk, asking staff to verify identification for room key requests because of a guest privacy concern. Emily posted a wedding photo beneath an arch of white flowers, her hand wrapped around Michael's, with the caption, "Nothing can ruin this day." Comments were disabled. 2 members of the wedding party were suddenly missing. One of them, a woman named Lauren who had been in Vegas, sent me a message before noon. She said she had never known I hadn't agreed to the card charges. According to Emily, I had offered to help cover the Bachelorette weekend as my wedding gift. Lauren apologized and transferred money to me for one of the Vegas dinners she knew had gone onto my card. I hadn't asked her to. That was when I understood just how much of Emily's version depended on nobody comparing notes. The ceremony still happened. There was no dramatic canceled wedding, no screaming bride running from the altar, no cinematic confrontation in front of 200 guests. Real damage rarely arrives that neatly. Emily and Michael got married. Pictures went online. My parents smiled beside them. Ryan posed with a champagne glass like nothing had happened. But the wedding weekend ended early. No big after-party. The scheduled farewell brunch disappeared from the itinerary. Emily and Michael checked out sooner than planned. Lauren told me 2 more people had begun asking why the family had told everyone I voluntarily financed Vegas if the bank was treating the purchases as disputed. My room checkout was completely ordinary. I handed over my key, thanked the clerk, walked through the automatic doors, and drove home without seeing anyone in my family again. For the next 2 weeks, I did nothing. That was deliberate. Emily and Michael went on their honeymoon. Photos appeared from beaches, restaurants, and some resort where everything looked expensive and perfectly curated. Mom shared the pictures. Dad liked them. Ryan posted a congratulatory story. Then the photos stopped. The family's social media slowed down. I gave them time to believe the worst was over. Because I still had documentation from the bank. The fraud report, disputed transactions, account restrictions, the entire paper trail showing exactly what had happened. And Emily had just started a new job at a real estate company. A job she had proudly announced online with a paragraph about integrity, relationships, and earning people's trust. 2 weeks after the honeymoon ended, I opened my laptop and forwarded the documentation to the company's HR department through an anonymous address. The subject line was intentionally boring. Potential financial misconduct linked to recent hire. The message contained no threats. I wrote that a recent employee, Emily, appeared to have benefited from several $1,000s in unauthorized charges on a family member's credit account, and that the expenses had been formally disputed with the issuing bank. I attached the documents and said they could decide for themselves whether it was relevant. Then I closed the account. Ryan had spent the previous year talking endlessly about law school, especially 2 programs he wanted badly. I submitted brief, anonymous character and fitness concerns through their official channels, referencing his involvement in the family dispute and messages pressuring the account holder to restore access. Maybe nothing would happen. Maybe both schools would ignore it. I wasn't pretending I controlled the outcome. I was simply done keeping their secrets for them. Then I told the story online. Not under my real name, and not with every identifying detail, but enough. Graduation? Vegas? The unauthorized card? The invoice? The wedding invitation? The family insisting I was destroying them by refusing to finance them. Within a day, the post exploded. Thousands of comments. People calling my family unbelievable. People arguing I had gone too far. People saying they had spent their whole lives being the reliable sibling and recognized every part of it. A few tried to guess what would happen next. Then Emily sent me a voice message. This time she wasn't shouting. That made it stranger. "I know you're angry," she said carefully, "but contacting people's jobs and schools isn't justice, Brianna. This is personal. It's going to follow us for years. You need to decide what kind of person you want to be." She paused. Then came the line I knew was coming. "Mom is devastated." I saved the voicemail and didn't answer. 3 days later, a handwritten letter arrived from Mom. She said the family wasn't the same anymore. She said I had made my point, and it was time to let things go before this does more damage. I read that sentence several times. Before this does more damage. As though I were standing over something healthy with a hammer. As though the empty chair at graduation had never existed. As though the Vegas charges had appeared by magic. As though the invoice asking me to pay for my own exclusion had been reasonable. I folded the letter, placed it back in the envelope, and put it in a drawer. They still believed the story began when I froze the card. But for me, it had begun years earlier. The only difference was that now, for the first time, they were living with consequences they couldn't charge back to me. By the end of summer, the silence had changed. This wasn't the same cold shoulder my family used whenever they expected me to apologize first. There were no guilt-heavy voicemails. No relatives suddenly remembering my number. No Ryan sending passive-aggressive quotes about forgiveness. It was simply absence. Through Josh, I heard that Emily was under review at work. Nothing dramatic had happened yet, but several deals she expected to handle had been reassigned, and apparently, somebody in her office had recognized details from the story circulating online. Ryan stopped talking about law school completely. His social media went private, his follower count kept shrinking, and the inspirational posts about becoming an attorney vanished. My parents, who once documented every barbecue and birthday dinner like they were managing a family publicity account, stopped posting too. Their last photo was a blurry neighborhood brunch selfie where everyone looked like they were trying very hard to appear normal. I could have stayed away forever. Part of me wanted to. I had already learned that distance could become its own kind of peace, but another part of me hated that one physical reminder of everything was still sitting somewhere inside my parents' house. The original credit card. The plastic card Dad had convinced me to put his name on years ago. The one they treated as emergency access, until emergency apparently became bottle service in Vegas. I had already closed the account and replaced everything connected to it, so technically the card was useless, but emotionally, it still felt like a loose thread. I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted closure. So when Thanksgiving came around, I decided to go back once. Nobody invited me. Josh forwarded the family group message without commentary. Dinner at 4. Same house, same kitchen. Same ridiculous annual argument about whether Dad should carve the turkey before everyone arrived. My name wasn't mentioned anywhere. I drove over anyway and arrived 30 minutes late wearing black jeans, a black sweater, and the coat I had bought after moving apartments. I didn't bring wine. I didn't bring dessert. I didn't bring an apology. When I opened the front door, the conversation stopped so sharply it almost felt rehearsed. Mom froze beside the kitchen island. Dad lowered the carving knife. Emily sat beside Michael, looking exhausted despite the perfect makeup. Ryan had a glass of wine halfway to his mouth and stared at me like I had walked in from another life. Nobody spoke first, so I did. I'm here for the card. Dad's expression changed instantly. He knew exactly which one. Mom whispered my name, but I kept my eyes on him. The original card. I want it back. No speech. No accusations. No demand for reimbursement. No threat to call the police. Dad put down the knife and disappeared into the kitchen. I knew the drawer before he even opened it. The junk drawer beside the microwave, where they kept spare batteries, old keys, coupons, and apparently pieces of my financial life. He came back holding the card between two fingers. For one strange second, I remembered being 19 and proud when it first arrived. I had thought being trusted with credit meant I was becoming an adult. I hadn't understood that my family saw access differently than I did. Dad handed it over without looking at me. I put it into my coat pocket. Emily finally spoke. Was all of this really necessary? Her voice wasn't angry anymore. That somehow made the question worse. I looked at her, then at Mom, then Ryan. You chose her, I said to my parents. You always did, and that's fine. But you don't get to spend my future paying for your guilt about it. Mom's face crumpled. Dad looked at the floor. Ryan muttered something about me being dramatic. Emily stared down at her plate. For months, I had imagined having 100 things to say if I ever stood in that room again. In reality, those 2 sentences were enough. I turned around and left before anyone could convert the moment into another debate about my tone. I spent Thanksgiving with the people who had actually celebrated my graduation. We ordered enough takeout for twice the number of people there, played video games, drank cheap wine, and stayed awake until nearly 3 in the morning arguing about movies. Nobody asked me to explain why I had gone to my parents' house. Nobody told me I needed to forgive anyone before I could heal. One friend just slid a plate toward me and said, "Eat before everything gets cold." That almost broke me more than anything my mother could have said. Care without conditions felt unfamiliar enough to hurt. 4.5 months later, An email arrived from a nonprofit I had applied to more than a year earlier when I was finishing school and sending resumes everywhere. They had a new community outreach position and said my name had remained on their shortlist. The salary wasn't spectacular. The job involved events, administrative work, coordinating volunteers, and spending a lot of time talking to people who needed help navigating programs. But the email sounded human. I interviewed, accepted the offer, and moved out of the city where I had grown up within 2 weeks. My new apartment was small, second floor, creaky staircase, ancient kitchen cabinets. I loved it immediately. Nobody else had a key. The job surprised me. I didn't dread Mondays. I came home tired, but it was a useful kind of tired, the feeling that I had spent the day doing something instead of managing somebody else's emotions. Nobody there knew my parents. Nobody knew Emily. Nobody had heard the family version of me before meeting me. For the first time, my last name didn't arrive in the room ahead of me. I started buying groceries without checking whether some forgotten shared payment might suddenly hit my account. I decorated the apartment badly, because every choice was mine. I even bought a stupid yellow couch that Mom would have hated, which probably made me love it more. Emily tried contacting me once in January. She sent a podcast episode called something like Rebuilding Relationships After Family Conflict. No text, no apology. No acknowledgement of Vegas or graduation or the invoice, just the link. I didn't open it. I forwarded it to one of my friends with the subject line, "Apparently podcasts are apologies now." Ryan never got into the law schools he used to talk about. Josh later told me he had enrolled in paralegal courses and was calling it a strategic pivot. Maybe that really was what he wanted. Maybe it wasn't. I stopped checking. The more distance I created, the less satisfying updates about their lives became. My parents never reached out again. No letters, no birthday card, no forwarded meme pretending nothing had happened. At first, I kept expecting the silence to break. Then months passed, and I realized I didn't need it to. I could have pushed the fraud dispute further. I could have pursued every possible consequence. I chose not to, not because I suddenly wanted to protect them, but because I no longer wanted my life organized around winning a war against people I was trying to leave behind. There is a point where revenge and attachment begin looking too similar. I wanted out more than I wanted victory. I still get strange little reminders. A candle in a grocery aisle that smells exactly like the ones Mom burned every December. A man laughing in a restaurant with the same rough sound Dad used to make before everything between us became complicated. For a second, some old version of home comes rushing back. Then it passes. The people who stayed are the friends who screamed my name at graduation until strangers laughed, who carried boxes down 3 flights of stairs when I moved, who invited me into their families during holidays without making me feel like charity. 2 of them drove out to visit my new city just because they wanted to see where I lived. No crisis, no favor, no money involved. They simply showed up. That was the real ending, I think. Not Emily losing status at work. Not Ryan changing plans. Not my parents sitting through a Thanksgiving with one empty chair. The ending was realizing my life kept moving after I stopped begging them to value it. There was no dramatic reconciliation. No tearful family photograph. No caption about healing. Just a small apartment. A job I liked. Friends who called for no reason. And a future where nobody could spend my money, my time, or my self-respect without permission. Some families don't suddenly fall apart. Sometimes they were built around cracks everyone agreed not to look at. And sometimes surviving them means being the first person willing to stop pretending the cracks aren't there.